Nathan claimed he had to work late on our anniversary. Not long after, I saw him at the hotel where I worked, holding Sophie and checking into a room. They were so consumed by each other that they began getting intimate in the hallway before even entering the room. A cleaning lady interrupted their actions, asking me to step aside. Nathan, still looking at me with desire, said, "Ella, I have needs. You're pregnant and can't fulfill them. I can't keep everything bottled up. This is the first and last time, I promise. Sophie and I will just be friends after this, and I'll take precautions. Please understand." He then pushed Sophie into the room, and soon after I heard sounds of their pleasure. Devastated, I touched my stomach and messaged my friend, saying I was quitting and leaving Nathan to join her company. I put my phone away and returned to work. A colleague tapped my arm and asked curiously, "Wasn't that your husband earlier? Who was the woman with him? They seemed close." I quickly lied, saying he was with a friend. Afterward, I found the situation laughable and added, "He won't be my husband much longer." My colleague looked shocked, likely not expecting such a reaction from someone known for her calm demeanor. Watching Nathan leave with Sophie was unbearable. Later, I couldn't focus on my shift and decided to go home. I used to be a makeup artist, but after we married, Nathan convinced me to quit, saying my job was unstable. He persuaded me to take a hotel job nearby, where I started working days and acting as his caretaker after hours. This routine wore me out. Whenever I mentioned returning to makeup artistry, he dismissed the idea, insisting my current job was better. "The makeup industry has no future," he'd say. "You'd be traveling constantly and who knows what could happen." Nathan was 8 years older, and when we met, his maturity gave me a sense of security I'd never had, growing up without a father figure. However, over the years, he became overbearing, treating me as if his opinions were always correct. When I suggested a break, I soon found out I was pregnant, and our separation plans ended there. One morning, Nathan returned home after being out all night, holding a $9,999 gold ring. "Try it on," he urged. "I bought it just for you." In the past, I would have feigned excitement to avoid disappointing him, but that day, I forced a stiff smile. "Don't be upset. I promise I won't see Sophie again," he said, slipping the oversized ring onto my finger. I found the situation both ridiculous and infuriating. He knew I didn't like gold. It felt impersonal, but he never listened. Every time he made a mistake, he'd use gold gifts as an apology. To emphasize his sincerity, he raised 3 fingers and swore, "If I ever go out with her again, let heaven punish me." His clear eyes belied the lingering scent of Sophie's perfume on him. Feeling nauseous, I ran to the bathroom and vomited. Nathan misinterpreted it as morning sickness and kindly made me instant coffee, not realizing that pregnant women shouldn't drink it. His ignorance made me want to cry, but I couldn't. A month prior, he'd brought me crab-fried rice after a performance. At the time, I had an eye sty and didn't realize it contained crab. After a few bites, I experienced severe stomach pain. Though I begged him to take me to the hospital, he brushed it off when Sophie called, saying she was scared to be alone. He hurried out, leaving me in pain. Later, at the hospital, I was told I had miscarried due to uterine contractions from eating the crab. Distraught, I tried to tell Nathan, but the doorbell rang. He answered it, taking a lacy gift box into his study. Curiosity got the better of me, and I entered his study without permission. Inside, I found intimate lingerie and a stack of nude photos of him and Sophie, each dated with sweet notes. He didn't notice me until he'd finished admiring all 45 photos. Startled, he dropped the box, scattering the pictures. "Nathan, Sophie was back for only 45 days, and you spent every one of those nights with her?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. He tried to comfort me, but I recoiled, filing for divorce immediately. Nathan panicked, kneeling and pleading. "Ella, don't be unreasonable. Divorce isn't a small matter. It'll hurt you and the baby. A child needs both parents." Before he could say more, Sophie called, sobbing over her missing kitten. Without hesitation, Nathan grabbed his keys to comfort her, leaving me alone yet again. Ella, I'm sorry, but I need to go to Sophie's. Please calm down and we'll talk when I get back, Nathan said before leaving. I closed my eyes slowly, unaware that my nails were digging into my skin. I had experienced the pain of growing up without a father, which made me understand it deeply. That was why, when I found out I was pregnant unexpectedly, I chose to overlook Nathan's betrayal. But now, the baby was gone, and I knew divorce was the only reasonable choice for both of us. The following day at work, I submitted my resignation letter to my boss. He made a half-hearted attempt to convince me to stay, but as soon as he realized I was resolute, he quickly signed it. I could leave within a month. I had long understood that no employee is irreplaceable to an employer. Applying this same logic to love was something I was only now coming to terms with. While lost in thought, my phone buzzed with a message from Nathan. He said he would pick me up after work and take me to a hot spring. I refused, but when my shift ended, there he was, waiting and waving at me. A colleague, unaware of the situation, expressed envy at how attentive my husband was. Not wanting to lose face in front of my co-workers and hoping to discuss the divorce, I hesitated briefly before getting into the car. Nathan motioned for me to sit in the back, but I instinctively opened the front passenger door. Only when Sophie chirped a cheerful hi from the seat did I understand why he wanted me in the back. I locked eyes with Nathan, waiting for an explanation, but he pretended not to notice and climbed back into the driver's seat. We were still legally married, and Sophie's audacious behavior as the mistress enraged me. I tore the wife's seat sign from the dashboard and threw it at her. Flustered, she stammered an apology. Ella, I'm sorry. Brooks picked me up earlier, and I got a little car sick, so I sat up front. I'll move now. As Sophie tried to step out, she stumbled and fell back into the seat. Nathan immediately grew concerned. Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? He asked anxiously. Sophie, holding her head, reassured him. It's nothing serious, just a little dizziness. I'm sorry for causing trouble. Nathan shook his head. No, it's my bad driving that made the ride uncomfortable. Watching them exchange words, I sighed and retreated to the back seat for some semblance of peace. The entire ride was filled with their laughter as they reminisced about their school days, making me feel like an intruder in my own life. From her position in the front seat, Sophie smirked at me through the rearview mirror, clearly enjoying my discomfort. Refusing to engage, I closed my eyes and pretended to rest. Just as I was beginning to drift off, the car's music blared suddenly, jolting me awake. Nathan glared at me and snapped, Ella, why are you so jumpy? You almost caused me to hit the car in front of us. Sophie chimed in apologetically. Sorry, that was my fault. I played a piece called Symphony of Surprise. It's a bit intense. If you'd like, I can play something softer, maybe Mozart's Minuet. It's my favorite. Such beautiful melodies. She prattled on, trying to show off her knowledge of classical music. Nathan's indulgent smile as he listened to her made my chest tighten. I couldn't help but recall the time he berated me for mistaking Haydn for Mozart during a theatre visit, calling me uneducated and an embarrassment. Yet now, he let Sophie's mistake slide without a word of correction. After 40 minutes, we arrived at the Hot Spring Hotel. The parking lot was a short walk from the entrance. Sophie clung to Nathan's arm, whining, It's so cold! Let me borrow Nathan for warmth. You don't mind, right? Her fake sweetness made my blood boil, but I said nothing. Moments later, she released him and turned to me with feigned regret. Maybe I've upset Ella somehow. I tried to talk to her, but she ignored me. Nathan, do you think I did something wrong? She asked pitifully. Nathan, ever ready to defend her, scolded me. Ella, stop being so rude. Apologize to Sophie right now. Unable to tolerate the situation, I stormed ahead to the front desk. Nathan caught up as I reached the desk, but with people around, he restrained himself from making a scene. Instead, he threw his backpack at me and muttered, If you're going to stay silent, you might as well stay mute forever. Sophie immediately began consoling him. Don't be upset, Brooks. Ella's young and inexperienced. She'll learn in time. You've been out in the world, working hard, while she's still stuck in a simple hotel job with no ambition. Their voices faded as they walked away together, leaving me alone. I touched my forehead, where Nathan's bag had hit me, feeling the sting. The emotional pain of being so openly disregarded cut even deeper. After changing, I climbed to a secluded hot spring pool near the mountaintop. From my vantage point, I could see Nathan and Sophie below. He was teaching her to swim, their laughter carrying through the crisp air. This was a place Nathan and I used to come to together. He had once bought a membership here so we could visit every weekend, but since Sophie's return, he had stopped accompanying me. Initially, I asked about his absence, but his excuses grew tiresome, and eventually, I stopped asking. He never volunteered an explanation. Feeling despondent, I prepared to leave within half an hour. Just then, Sophie appeared, her expression smug. "Do you know why you're here today?" she asked, stepping closer. "It's so you can see how much Nathan cares about me. He's only staying with you because you're pregnant. If it weren't for that, he'd have left you already." Though divorce was already on my mind, her arrogance fueled my resistance. "I can't bear to leave Nathan," I said pointedly. "I won't divorce him." Sophie's face contorted with rage. Without warning, she shoved me into the water. The icy pool engulfed me, covering my head and ears. I struggled to break free, but she held me down. In desperation, I grabbed her arm and pulled her in with me, finally freeing myself. We both surfaced, gasping for air. A passerby approached, and Sophie began screaming dramatically, playing the victim. Exhausted by her antics, I slapped her across the face. Her eyes blazed with fury as she raised her hand, ready to retaliate. Ella noticed Nathan in her peripheral vision just as she reached to retaliate. In that moment, Ella grabbed her thigh, tears streaming down her face as Nathan rushed to her side with concern etched across his features. "Ella, what are you doing? Why are you hitting her?" he exclaimed. Trembling, I asked, "Don't you want to know why I did it?" He threw his hands up in frustration, yelling, "I don't care about the reason. Hitting someone is wrong, especially Sophie. You know Sophie is mine." His words revealed more than he intended. I couldn't help but respond, "Yours? The person you care about most? Your bad partner? Did I get that wrong?" His face fell at my stinging words. He coughed nervously, avoiding my gaze. To break the tension, Sophie cried out uncomfortably, "Nathan, I think I'm having my period. I feel awful." Nathan immediately shifted his attention to her, supporting Sophie and massaging her abdomen while asking if I had any painkillers. Turning away, I walked off without a word, heading to the surveillance office before leaving the hotel. Spending some money, I obtained footage from the pool of the earlier incident and contacted the police. The authorities arrived swiftly, and I guided them to Sophie, who seemed bewildered. An officer pointed at her in the video. "The person in the red swimsuit, is that you? We suspect you intentionally harmed someone. Please come with us." Watching the footage, Sophie panicked, pleading with Nathan. "Brooks, I was just joking with Ella. I didn't mean to hurt her." Nathan's reaction was conflicted, but after Sophie begged him, his protective instincts took over. Fearing for Sophie's arrest, he approached me and softly suggested, "Sophie was just joking with you. Are you sure you're not overreacting? If you're willing to reconcile, I'll agree to anything." Forcing a smile despite the ache in my chest, I replied, "I've already had the divorce papers drafted. If you sign them, I'll consider reconciling." Nathan hesitated, but Sophie tugged at his fingers, acting sweetly. Glancing at her, he finally agreed. I knew the video alone wouldn't lead to severe consequences for Sophie, but Nathan's devotion to her made him easy to manipulate. With the police present, he wrote a statement of guarantee, and we settled the matter. Leaving the station, I returned to my villa, indifferent to Nathan and Sophie's whereabouts. Exhausted from the turmoil, I sought solace in the villa's hot springs, quickly falling into a deep sleep. Later that night, I awoke to Sophie's piercing screams. Rushing to the scene, I saw Nathan bleeding from a cut on his arm, while a man dressed in black held Sophie hostage with a knife pressed to her neck. "I'm only here for money. Toss out your cash and no one gets hurt," the man demanded. Regaining my composure, I moved to call the police. Sophie, noticing my actions, shouted, "Ella, don't! He's just here for money. He won't harm us!" Her loud warning exposed my attempt, infuriating the thief. Releasing Sophie, he bolted upstairs toward me. Panicked, I locked myself in a room, using furniture to barricade the door. As his footsteps thundered closer, I hurriedly called the police. The thief began kicking the door, attempting to break it down. I prayed for the door to hold, but his relentless assault weakened it. With one final blow, it gave way. Desperate, I hurled objects at him, but he still managed to grab me. His demeanor shifted suddenly. Instead of stealing, his intentions turned sinister. Just as I was about to lose hope, hotel security intervened. The thief held the knife to my neck again before I blacked out. When I came to, my friend Olivia was by my side, tears in her eyes. "Ella, you scared me to death," she exclaimed. I burst into tears of frustration, every neck movement sending sharp pains. After calming down, I noticed the police and hotel manager nearby. They explained the thief had targeted the neighboring building but chose our unit upon noticing the door wasn't fully secured. I was puzzled, certain I had locked the smart door. Behind the crowd, Nathan stood, looking apologetic. After the police left, a nurse entered and Nathan rushed to her. "She's pregnant. Will the medication affect the baby?" The nurse looked puzzled. "We didn't find a pregnancy," she replied. Shocked, Nathan turned to me. "What happened? Where's my baby?" he demanded. Calmly, I replied, "It's gone." He gasped. "You killed my baby. That was the child from the broken condom. You had an abortion." His accusations made my head spin. I realized my pregnancy wasn't accidental. Nathan had plotted to trap me. My friends defended me, calling out his neglect and irresponsibility for causing the miscarriage. Nathan, furious at being exposed, tried to hit my friend, but was stopped by security. Enraged and humiliated, he destroyed hospital equipment before declaring, "Fine, you want a divorce? You'll get one." He stormed off as more onlookers gathered. I felt humiliated, realizing how far he had fallen from the man I once knew. We had first met backstage during a performance. Amidst the chaos, my asthma flared, and my inhaler ran out. Alone and struggling to breathe, Nathan noticed and rushed to my aid, fetching medicine that saved me. He left before I could thank him. Months later, we crossed paths again at another performance. This time, he proudly introduced me to his band. Nathan introduced me to his bandmates, saying, "This is the girl I helped backstage." The other members looked at me curiously, and the guitarist remarked, "You know, Nathan's drumsticks are like his lifeline. He left them backstage to help you. That means you're special." Despite their teasing, Nathan didn't deny it. Embarrassed, I blushed under his gaze. Encouraged by his friends, we exchanged contact details and began dating, which eventually led to marriage. Our relationship was filled with beautiful moments, but over time, irreparable cracks began to form. After leaving the hospital, I waited for Nathan to return home and discuss our divorce, but days passed with no sign of him. Each time I asked where he was, he either ignored me or claimed he was busy. One day, Nathan's bandmates approached me, greeting me politely before becoming emotional. A few couldn't hold back their frustration and began questioning me. "Can't you stop clinging to Nathan? A man needs his career, not a wife holding him back. Lately, he's been skipping rehearsals, claiming he's staying with you because of your morning sickness. If this continues, we'll have to replace him as our drummer." Their words left me speechless. Then they suddenly looked past me, their expressions shifting. Turning around, I saw Nathan passionately kissing Sophie on a street corner. They were dressed elegantly, with a photographer filming what was clearly a romantic shoot. Even Nathan's bandmates, who had criticized me moments earlier, stood up and confronted him. "Nathan, you keep saying you're with your wife, but is this the wife you're talking about?" Nathan, who had been smiling moments before, froze and looked panicked, though he tried to explain the situation was beyond saving. His band leader angrily declared, "Nathan, we're officially firing you from the band." The keyboardist, shaking his head, added, "Take care of yourself." The lead singer, who had walked away, turned back and spat, "You're a deadbeat who can't handle his job or personal life." Humiliated, Nathan turned his anger on me, slapping me in public and attempting to strike again. The photographer stepped in, stopping him. "You didn't respond to my messages, so you went to my band," Nathan shouted, furious. "You know how much they mean to me. Now I'm fired. Are you happy?" The photographer, clearly disgusted, retorted, "Someone who isn't committed to their marriage doesn't deserve wedding photos. I'll refund your deposit." She protected me from further harm and left. Nathan tried to chase after me but was distracted when Sophie collapsed on the sidewalk. "Brooks, I feel faint." "Maybe I skipped breakfast," she murmured. Nathan turned back to care for her. Later, I messaged him again, saying, "I've prepared the divorce agreement. If you don't meet me tomorrow, I'll file in court." His response was quick and dismissive. "Go ahead, I'm not divorcing you. I'll just drag this out." Realizing his stubbornness, I asked my lawyer to prepare a formal divorce petition and began gathering evidence of his infidelity. Time passed, and on the last day of my job, I planned to celebrate with Olivia after my shift. However, chaos erupted when the front desk phone rang with complaints. Guests from room 8328 were disturbing others, particularly families with children. Determined to handle the issue, I went to the room. As I approached, loud, shameless noises confirmed the complaints. Knocking politely, I waited, but no one answered. Just as I was about to knock again, the door swung open, revealing Nathan and Sophie. My smile froze as Nathan sneered, "What do you want? Want to join us?" Sophie clung to Nathan, whining, "Nathan, stop being bad. I just want time alone with you." Taking a deep breath, I addressed them professionally. "Sir, ma'am, we've received noise complaints. Please lower the volume." Before I could finish, they slammed the door in my face. Frustrated but determined, I decided to use the incident as evidence. Later, they called the front desk, reporting a broken water heater. I accompanied the technician to their room, where Nathan and Sophie acted overly affectionate, clearly trying to provoke me. However, I stayed calm and managed to record enough evidence to send to my lawyer. After my shift, Olivia came to celebrate my resignation. Over dinner, I savored salmon sashimi, a dish Nathan had forbidden me from eating during our marriage, under the guise of concern. Olivia smiled warmly and congratulated me, asking, "When will you start at my company?" Reflecting on the 10 years I'd sacrificed for Nathan, I replied, "I might study abroad for a while." Olivia offered, "You can live with me when you return to avoid any more trouble from him." I nodded, grateful for her support. Later, while packing my belongings, I realized my passport was missing. Checking the surveillance footage from my study, I discovered Nathan had taken it. When I confronted him with the video, he denied everything. With no options left, I sent the footage to my mother-in-law. Furious, she booked the next flight to confront Nathan. Upon arriving, she stormed into his home and found him with Sophie in a compromising position. Outraged, she grabbed a broom and began hitting them. Nathan, afraid of harming his mother, didn't resist, but Sophie screamed, "You old fool, how dare you!" Brandishing a knife, she slashed Nathan's face as he tried to protect his mother. Furious, he retaliated by slapping her, and the two began fighting. Amid the chaos, I retrieved my stolen documents and pulled Nathan's mother to safety. After ensuring she was unharmed, I prepared for the next step in severing my ties with Nathan once and for all. Sophie's pain was undeniable, so I rushed her to the hospital without delay. While waiting outside the operating room, Nathan stormed in, his face full of panic and anger. "How could Sophie lose the baby after being with you? Are you some heartless witch determined to hurt her and my child? If anything happens to Sophie, I'll never forgive you." His hysterical accusations echoed in the corridor, but I stayed silent, trusting the truth would come out. Finally, the surgery ended, and Sophie was wheeled out, weak and pale. She pointed a trembling finger at me and cried, "Ella killed our baby. I kept telling her my stomach hurt, but she refused to let me go to the hospital. Ella, why do you hate me and my baby so much? You've had abortions yourself. How could you treat me like this?" Nathan's eyes reddened with anger as he processed her words. Having lost 2 children, he seemed to lose control. Before I could react, he chased after me, kicking and slapping me in a fit of rage. Bruises quickly covered my body, and the pain was unbearable. I curled up on the floor, protecting my head and vital areas as he kept attacking me. I thought I might not survive the assault, but just as I felt close to death, hospital security finally intervened, dragging him away. The look he gave me was filled with hatred. He seemed to wish me dead. It was a bitter end to a once-loving relationship. At the police station, Nathan continued to hurl accusations at me, but I quietly removed a small recorder from my chest and presented the evidence. The facts were undeniable, and Nathan was left speechless. Although shame flickered across his face, I knew it wouldn't last. When the police asked if I wanted to reconcile, I firmly refused. I was determined not to let him escape accountability for his actions. After my injuries were classified as minor, Nathan was sentenced to 7 days of administrative detention. His mother stood silently by his side, tears streaming down her face. She seemed much older than I remembered, likely worn down by months of stress. Feeling a pang of sympathy, I apologized to her, but she replied tearfully, "Ella, it's our family's fault. We failed you, and the Brooks family owes you." Her words struck me deeply. If Nathan hadn't been so cruel, we might have been a happy family. She had always treated me kindly, but life doesn't work with what-ifs. Initially, I planned to stay in the North to continue my career, but a call from Uncle Lee changed everything. He informed me that my mother's health was declining, so I decided to move south to be closer to her and avoid crossing paths with Nathan again. When I arrived, my mother embraced me tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. She had raised me alone after my father's death, and her new partner, Uncle Lee, had always treated her well. She wanted me to stay and inherit Uncle Lee's company, but I had foolishly given up everything, family and wealth, for Nathan. Several months later, I opened a makeup studio. Olivia came to the grand opening and leaned in to whisper, "Nathan's in prison." Confused, I asked, "Wasn't he only detained for 7 days?" Olivia's curious expression turned serious as she explained the situation. That's when I learned the truth. Sophie's baby wasn't Nathan's. She had tried every possible method to terminate the pregnancy without arousing suspicion. After her miscarriage, the real father confronted Nathan, revealing the betrayal. Furious, Nathan stabbed both Sophie and her lover, which earned him a 13-year prison sentence. Stunned by the revelation, I felt my chest tighten. Olivia nudged me. "What's wrong? Do you still pity him?" I shook my head. "No, but I feel bad for his mother. She was always good to me." A short time after the studio opened, I traveled north to visit her and arranged for her to move into a nursing home. She was deeply touched by the gesture and insisted on leaving her entire estate to me. Although I tried to refuse, she remained adamant. Before I left, she handed me a letter from Nathan, written in his own hand. Curious, I opened it to find a long confession and apology. He begged for my forgiveness, promising to change and asking if I could wait for him after his release. He swore to be a better man and love me forever. As I read the letter, anger welled up inside me. How could he still be so arrogant? He truly believed that a simple apology could erase all the pain and let us start over. Disgusted, I tore up the letter and threw it away. I returned to the South and focused on rebuilding my life. 2 years later, news reached me that Nathan had died suddenly in prison. From that moment, Nathan was no longer part of my world. The pain and betrayal were behind me, and I looked forward to a future full of hope and new possibilities.